I am very excited and grateful for introducing our next guest. He is a very special figure for me and for us in Drone Pixel. I am talking about Mirza Ahmad. He has been an electrical engineer since 1980. He has almost 40 years of experience working in the telecom industry. He is a professional who has led telecommunication deployment and business in the Asian market, with offices in Hong Kong, Malaysia, Asia, and India. Mirza has been in the early days of telecom. He made his first cell phone call from his car back in 1992. He has worked with top leaders in the telecom industries like Motorola, Nokia, Ericsson, and other vendors. Right now, he is retired, but he is still involved in the telecom industry as our wildlife mentor. Thanks, Mirza, for being part of this event and for joining us today. Welcome.
All right, Louis, Maria, thank you very much.
Can you tell us about your experience with technical site surveys in the early days of the telecommunication industry?
So you want to know about the old days, right? I'll tell you one thing, that you cannot even imagine the difference between today and 20, 30 years ago. You know how much time you used to spend on one site, preparation, calling, the logistics, the climber, the engineer who had to be on the site, the tower rigger who had to climb, insurance, so many things you had to take care of. But to make a long story short, what you do today and what was done 30 years ago, there's a 10x or 20x difference in time, maybe even more. But for example, if I want to do a survey, I will have to make a lot of phone calls. I have to prepare, go to the site, arrange the rigger, the tower climber, get access, a lot of things. But all in all, it might take me 3 days for a site to do the survey.
Wow.
Today, because everybody is knowledgeable, the survey can be done very fast. But remember, we are entering an era in drone that survey will be done even 10, 20 times faster than today. Because the software that's going to come up with the new technology, this is going to, you might get multiple drones at one time, and you are in an area where there are 3 or 4 towers, and you're sitting at one place and send 3 or 4 drones, and in 1 or 2 hours you are done with all the survey. But that's not just the more important thing. The level of detail you get today, forget about 30 years ago, because the digital cameras and that type of thing was not very accurate. You had to climb, you had to take pictures, you were unstable. It was a bit of a challenge and scary. But now it's a different story. And this is just the beginning. When I talk to you guys about the drone and the survey, I was not so much familiar with what the drone technology is about the survey. Now, when I think about it, we are just beginning. This is just the start. I think another 2, 3, 5 years, you will see amazing amount of speed and accuracy using drone. So to give you an answer, what we take 3 days, 5 days before, 1 hour, it's a lot of difference. So, but the thing is that before you had to be very careful about access. You had to be very careful about insurance. You had to be very careful about permits, about climbing, those type of things. Today with the drone, you don't have that type of issues, right? So there's a big barrier that was in the old days about the survey that is no longer you have with the drone. So there's a lot of difference. It's a different industry,
Did you remember how much the survey cost at that time?
It's funny. About 30 years ago, I remember doing a site survey. The budget was about $17,000. I remember that. Maybe there was one survey for 20,000, one for 25, one for 10,000. I remember one survey. We give them the price per site, $17,000.
Wow, this is a lot.
Wow.
Today it's 300, 500, 700, maybe even cheaper in the future. So it's a different industry. And remember, the cost of the hardware is much lower.
Yes.
In 20, 30 years ago, when you want to build a site, you were talking about $1 million, $1.5 million. So when they spend $17,000, it's relatively less than the overall cost, right? So the overall cost has been coming down. So that will give you an idea. $17,000 for a survey.
In that sense, what do you think was the reason behind the high cost of the surveys at that time? Do you think it was due to the lack of qualified staff? Or maybe the insurance that the company has to pay for the associated risk for the people involved in the inspection process?
In 1990, 91, 92, this was the time when there was a lot of rapid deployment. The deployment was speeding up very fast, right? In the 80s, it was like you do one market, you spend 1 year designing. It was a very slow process. In 91, 92, 93, the speed was picking up, right? There were more engineers. But the reason why it was so expensive is because the skill set required to do the survey, right? You had to have the RF background. It's not just to climb a tower and then take some pictures and, not like that. You have to have a sense of how the radio frequency is going to behave in the surroundings, right?
Yeah.
So that type of expertise in cellular was not very common. And I remember a time when our CEO used to say that we have 50, 70% of all the RF engineers in the world. He used to make that claim. That was a different time. Now we have 2,000 engineers maybe in Washington area,
Yes.
So it has changed a lot. So the reason why it was expensive, the type of expertise was very uncommon. People did not have RF engineering background. So when you tell somebody I'm an RF engineer, they say, wow,
Wow.
What do you think has changed between 20 years ago and now?
I think what has changed, and this didn't change just now, what has changed is that in 10, 20 years ago, RF, right, used to dominate the technology part. You had to be expert in RF, right? Today, it shifted from RF to software.
Yes.
It's all network and software driven, and it's much more complex, Maybe it's just complex for me because I don't understand networks and software, but now you are getting into a world where the network, which is software, before it was RF, right? Then it slowly became software driven, software controlled, and then the software platforms are moving into the cloud, right?
Yeah.
So you might have a network in a country that does not exist there.
Oh, yeah.
You
Physically.
might have an antenna. You might have an antenna. Okay, you need antenna. So you might place hundreds and thousands of antennas in a country,
Yeah.
and then the network is in the cloud.
Yes.
They send the signal, and then it's up and down and spread. So the technology, the brains, right, will move in the cloud, and only the antenna, the emitter, the emission will
Yeah.
take place in the area. So it's a different world. I tell you the truth, I don't really understand it. I just read about it, but this is a totally different world than I'm used to. And I think we are still in the early stages. When you have 5G and 6G, it's going to move up in the cloud, and a different business. So you will still have survey.
What do you envision for the drone's future?
I have thought about different things for the past many months, since we have been talking. I can imagine that you do a drone survey, and then you take that survey from the drone, not one site, not just one site, multiple sites. You go to an area, you do the drone survey, and you find out the site, and then you feed that drone information into the computer software or planning to it, and the drone automatically feeds into the network and then does the planning,
Yeah.
So those are things that we have not thought about, but I can imagine that so much automation will happen with the drones. You will not just do a normal survey, go to a site, take a picture, know where the antenna is, take a table, you need all that information. So you will have a very good information about the network, the infrastructure, and the inventory, right? The inventory. You will have good information. But I can imagine much more than that. I can imagine drone automatically taking up all the information, feeding it into the network, and you have drones going up, doing service and automatic feeding, and the network update and design comes out, the planning part. So this is just some thoughts I have, but I think we are just at the very beginning of what drone will do in the telecom. The survey part is a very simple, the basic part, but you might get to a point where the drones start to do even more than that, not just images and pictures, much more than that. And I don't know, your imagination is your, it depends how much you can imagine.
As we say, the sky is the limit.
The sky is the limit, exactly.
What would you recommend to the already established telecom companies that are not using drone technology?
Most of the problem happen in the network by lack of accurate knowledge. Sometimes you don't have updated knowledge about the network. So I think drones can be used to update the network information, physical, the antenna, the location, and all the basic stuff every month, every 2 months, or every 6 months, right? And drone can make it much cheaper to do it. So for a country like Venezuela, where I'm guessing sometimes they have problem with information not being updated, information not being accurate.
Yeah.
A drone can be used as a routine service to update the data all the time, and so drone can become a very effective tool to be informed about your network all the time and take proactive action, right? So good, accurate information of the tower site can be very, very helpful, useful. Let us not jump too far away into the future, okay? For a country like Venezuela, drone can be used to keep updated about the tower information all the time in a cheap way, in a more accurate way, and improve customer service.
Thank you, Mirza, for joining us today.
This is just the beginning. You have much more happening with drone, and I can see a lot of things.